There are people who carry an extra sense, not like sight or hearing or touch, something stranger. It's the ability to notice what should not be there. You've felt it. A laugh that lasts a little too long, like someone holding a mask until it cracks. The way a friend's voice dips half a note when they say they're fine. Or how, in a crowded street, you can sense which two strangers are bound by a secret, though their eyes never meet. Most people drift through the world as if it were seamless. You walk through it and feel the fractures beneath your feet. You hear the hum inside the silence. You glimpse the outlines of truths that haven't yet taken form, and this awareness doesn't arrive politely. It barges in, uninvited, like noticing the ticking of a clock no one else hears, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it, like smelling smoke long before anyone sees fire. At first, you wonder if this is a gift, but then comes the burden, the realization that what you see sets you apart. In a culture obsessed with positivity, smoothness, and constant brightness, this way of seeing feels like resistance. Byung-Chul Han reminds us that our age abolishes shadows. Everything must be transparent, visible, exposed, and in that exposure, meaning is lost. When you notice what others don't, you become a guardian of the shadow, of the hidden depth that no one else wants to admit still exists. And this makes people uneasy, because to acknowledge what you see would mean disrupting the endless surface of positivity. It would mean facing what society works so hard to erase: discomfort, silence, contradiction, the inconvenient other. This is why vision isolates. You laugh less when everyone is laughing. You hesitate when they nod too quickly. You feel the absence in moments where others see only presence, and in the quiet of your own thoughts, the question arises: if I'm the only one who notices, am I broken, or am I alone? Those who carried this burden before us, prophets, artists, thinkers, were not set apart because they saw gods, but because they saw the world too clearly. They detected the rot beneath the paint, the silence beneath the words, the exhaustion beneath the endless smile. Han would say they saw the violence of positivity, a world that drowns in its own brightness, unable to tolerate the relief of shadow. And so, those who see too much are rarely celebrated while they live. Their clarity unsettles, because to see what others cannot is not only lonely, it is dangerous. Dangerous not because it is false, but because it pierces the illusion of transparency. This is where our journey begins, with the strange gift that feels like a curse, with the second sight that makes you both too near and too far. Over the next few minutes, we'll uncover the hidden dangers of seeing too much, not to strip away the gift, but to learn how to bear it without breaking. Because your perception is not madness. It is not weakness. It is the persistence of the shadow in a world that fears the dark. And if you dare to hold it steady, you may discover what sets you apart is the very thing that can remind the world what it has forgotten, that without shadows there can be no true light. But once you begin to notice these hidden fractures, the first danger arrives, the quiet distance that opens between you and everyone else. Not the physical kind, but the invisible gap that opens between you and the world when you see too much. It begins subtly. A dinner table filled with laughter, yet you hear the thinness in it like porcelain about to crack. Everyone else is swept along by the rhythm of the joke, but you feel the hollowness underneath, and suddenly you are not inside the circle anymore, you are looking at it from outside. This is the paradox of perception. The closer you look, the further away you feel. Byung-Chul Han speaks of the disappearance of the other in our age. Modern life flattens difference, melts nuance into sameness, dissolves the foreign into the familiar until nothing truly challenges us. But when you notice the fractures, when you sense the strangeness that others rush to smooth over, you become the inconvenient reminder that the other still exists. And nothing isolates faster than being the one who refuses to pretend. It can feel like walking into a room where everyone is speaking in harmony, but you alone hear the dissonant note. You don't choose to hear it. It simply arrives, sharp and undeniable. And once you hear it, the harmony becomes unbearable. So you grow quiet, you laugh less, you nod more slowly, and the people around you notice. Even if they don't say it aloud, they feel the distance too.
They may whisper that you're cold, detached, difficult to please. But deep inside you know the truth. You are not detached. You are simply unwilling to drown in the shallow surface they call connection. Han reminds us that today's society has become a swarm, not a community, not a chorus, but a swarm. In the swarm, everyone reacts instantly, mirrors each other, echoes without reflection. It is fast, bright, and endlessly busy. But a swarm has no depth, no silence, no true encounter with the other. And when you see beyond the swarm, you cannot help but feel estranged from it. You realize that what others call belonging is often just synchronization, the safety of moving in unison without asking why. This estrangement cuts deeply because it's not about superiority. You don't feel better than others. You simply feel misaligned, as if you're tuned to a different frequency, and that frequency refuses to let you disappear into the noise. So what happens? Some retreat further, building walls of irony, cynicism, or silence. Others try to shrink themselves, to rejoin the circle, to unsee what they've seen. But neither path works. The wall becomes another prison. The shrinking becomes another kind of death. The only honest path is to name this distance, to recognize, yes, I stand apart, because I cannot pretend harmony where there is fracture, and in naming it, something shifts. The estrangement is still there, but it no longer means you are broken. It means you are awake. The danger then is not in the seeing itself. The danger is in mistaking your estrangement for failure, when in fact it is the natural consequence of clarity. Han would say to see what others do not is to preserve the other in a world that wants to erase it. To feel out of place is not to be defective. It is to resist the flattening pressure of the swarm. And while this resistance may leave you standing at the edges of the circle, remember the edges are where new worlds begin. And that distance does not remain outside you. It turns inward, becoming the second danger, the heavy burden of carrying too much within. Not the weight of the world, but the invisible heaviness of carrying too much perception inside your own skin. Imagine standing in a crowded street. Everyone else sees bodies moving, lights changing, noise flowing. You, however, see more the hidden tension in shoulders, the fatigue behind forced smiles, the small betrayals people hide even from themselves. It's as if invisible strings run from every passerby straight into you, and you can feel their pull. At first it seems like a rare privilege, this heightened sensitivity, but slowly it turns into exhaustion. Because while others experience the world as surface, you absorb its depths, and the human heart is not built to carry all of that, all the time. Byung-Chul Han writes of the exhaustion of our age, not exhaustion from oppression, but from overexposure. The violence of positivity. We are told to smile, to shine, to share, to always be on. Life becomes a marketplace of endless affirmation, where every shadow is erased. And so we burn out not from too little light, but from too much of it. When you see what others don't, you cannot avoid this brightness. You notice the manic insistence behind every cheerful post, the desperation beneath the constant productivity, the loneliness hidden inside the glowing screens. You become aware of the sheer volume of the world's performance, and it drowns you. It feels like drowning in clarity, like trying to drink from a glass that never empties, pouring itself into you faster than you can swallow. Like living in a room of mirrors where every reflection shouts your name, and so the inner burden grows heavier, not because you are weak, but because the world refuses to let you look away. The swarm thrives on transparency, Han reminds us. Everyone exposed, everything visible, everyone sharing, nothing left hidden, but the soul does not thrive on exposure. It needs opacity. It needs shadows, pauses, hidden rooms where silence can breathe. Without them, awareness mutates into fatigue. You begin to feel the weight of everything, every word, every glance, every unspoken tension. What others skip over, you carry. What others deny, you absorb. And with time, the body itself begins to protest. Sleepless nights, tightness in the chest, that peculiar exhaustion that doesn't leave, even after rest. This is the inner burden of perception, to see what others can't, and to feel as if you must hold it all. And yet, here lies the paradox. You are not meant to hold it all. You are not the container of every fracture in the world. Seeing is not the same as carrying. But when perception is sharp and the world is relentlessly exposed, it's hard to remember this. So you turn inward, you grow quiet, you build invisible walls, thinking they will protect you. But the walls don't filter the world, they trap it, and the burden only grows heavier. The true danger is not that you see too much, but that you believe you must bear what you see alone. Han would say, transparency without shadow leads not to truth, but to exhaustion. The cure for this burden is not more strength, not more endurance, but more silence, more opacity, more protected space. So the task is not to close your eyes, it is to learn how to carry the gift without letting it crush you, to give yourself permission to let some things pass through, to reclaim the shadow as sanctuary, not as prison. Because awareness is not meant to be endless light, it is meant to be light and shadow together, rhythm, contrast, balance. Without the shadow, the light is too heavy to hold. But the burden is not the only weight. Sooner or later, what you see presses outward, clashing with the system itself. The third danger. Not with individuals, but with the vast machinery we call society. When you see what others don't, you inevitably notice the cracks in the system itself. You hear the false notes not just in conversations, but in institutions, traditions, rules, and nothing unsettles the system more than the one who names its flaws too clearly. Byung-Chul Han writes that today's world no longer disciplines through prohibition or silence. Instead, it seduces with transparency, positivity, performance. We are invited, even forced, to display ourselves, to produce endlessly, to be authentic in the most superficial sense. The system thrives not on suppression, but on exposure. And here lies the conflict. When you see through the performance, when you notice the exhaustion hidden behind productivity, when you sense the emptiness beneath the glowing surface, you are not simply an individual, you become a disruption. Imagine an orchestra where every musician follows the same conductor, smiling as they play. The audience applauds, convinced they are hearing harmony, but you hear the dissonance, the slightly off-key violin, the percussion that drags. You raise your hand to say, something is wrong. The conductor glares. The musicians tighten, the crowd boos. The system doesn't want correction, it wants continuation. This is why seers, critics, and visionaries so often clash with their own time. The system treats them not as helpers, but as threats. Because the system is built to protect its illusion of smoothness, any hint of fracture must be silenced. Han would call this the tyranny of positivity. We live in a culture where critique itself is unwelcome. To doubt, to resist, to refuse to display yourself, all these are interpreted as negativity. And negativity has no place in the swarm, where everything must shine, respond, and flow. So what happens to those who see too much? They are difficult employees, troublemakers, outsiders. They are accused of pessimism, when in truth they are simply unwilling to decorate emptiness with applause. The danger here is double-edged. On one side, the system resists you. On the other, you begin to doubt yourself. The more they tell you everything is fine, the more you wonder if perhaps your perception is flawed. And yet deep down, you know the system would rather call you broken than admit it is cracked. This is not paranoia. History is filled with examples. Those who exposed hidden truths, whether in politics, culture, or even personal relationships, were rarely embraced at first. They were mocked, punished, excluded. Only later, often long after their deaths, were they celebrated as visionaries. But here is the paradox. The system both depends on and rejects those who see too much. Without them it stagnates. With them it feels threatened. This tension will never disappear. It is built into the fabric of human society. And so the danger is not simply that you will be rejected. The deeper danger is that you will begin to silence yourself, to protect the system, to avoid conflict, to remain in the circle of comfort. But every time you swallow your perception, every time you hide what you see, the burden grows heavier. Han would say, in a culture addicted to positivity, the act of saying no becomes revolutionary. The refusal to conform, the courage to point to the crack, is the only way the other can survive. The conflict, then, is not proof that you are broken, it is proof that you are alive, awake, unwilling to let the swarm dictate what counts as reality. But to live with this clarity requires wisdom. You cannot fight every battle. You cannot correct every illusion. The art is learning where to speak and where to remain silent, not out of fear, but out of strength. Because sometimes the most radical act is not to overthrow the system, but simply to remain the one who sees. And when the system resists your vision, you may retreat further until the fourth danger takes shape, the prison of self-isolation. Not the peaceful kind, but the silent retreat into a fortress of your own making. When you see what others don't, estrangement follows. And when estrangement persists, the temptation is to close the gates completely, to build walls so high, no one can reach you. At first it feels like protection, but slowly, protection turns into exile. Byung-Chul Han reminds us that our age worships transparency. We are expected to confess, to display, to share every thought and feeling. Privacy has become a scandal, secrecy a crime. But here lies the paradox. When everything must be visible, the only way to feel safe is to vanish, to disappear into yourself. And so you begin to self-isolate. You filter every word before speaking, calculating how it will be misunderstood. You share less, convinced that no one else could bear the full weight of what you perceive. You grow addicted to your own silence, until silence itself becomes a cage. It is not solitude in the true sense. Solitude is fertile. It nourishes creativity, reflection, depth. Self-isolation is different. It is the barren kind, an endless loop of observation without exchange. You see, but you do not speak. You feel, but you do not reveal. You turn your vision inward until it corrodes you from within. Han calls this the collapse of the other. To be fully oneself requires the presence of another who resists, who interrupts, who surprises. But in isolation, the other disappears. All that remains is the mirror. And staring into the mirror too long does not reveal truth, it magnifies distortion. The danger is subtle. You tell yourself you are simply protecting your gift, that you need no one, that you are stronger alone. But slowly, the world becomes unreal. Faces blur, voices echo faintly. Your own reflection becomes the only horizon. It feels like living inside a glass tower. From up there you see everything with clarity, the streets, the people, their patterns. But no one can climb to meet you. And over time you forget what it means to touch the ground. This is self-isolation, the transformation of clarity into loneliness, of vision into exile. And yet, you do not choose this entirely. The world plays its part. When society treats perception as a threat, when people recoil from the truths you name, retreat becomes the only defense left. It is easier to hide than to be constantly misunderstood. But here is the deeper danger. Once you withdraw completely, your vision loses its purpose. Perception without connection becomes sterile. Seeing is meant to be shared, not with everyone, not recklessly, but with someone. Without this exchange, the gift turns inward, feeding on itself until it becomes poison. Han would say transparency without distance destroys intimacy. True connection requires the mystery of the other, the space of not knowing, the patience of silence that is shared, not hoarded. Self-isolation eliminates this space. It replaces intimacy with surveillance of oneself. You become your own jailer, so how do you resist this danger? Not by abandoning solitude, but by distinguishing it from exile. By choosing moments of shared silence over endless private silence. By finding even a single person with whom the other can be preserved. Because perception, no matter how sharp, was never meant to remain locked in a tower. It was meant to pass between human beings, like a lantern carried carefully through the dark. The danger of self-isolation is real, but so is the possibility of breaking it. It begins with a simple act, letting one other person see what you see, not all of it, not at once, but enough to remind you that you are not alone inside your vision. Still, there is a paradox hidden inside these dangers. A truth that can turn what feels like curse into something closer to calling. After 4 dangers, the picture may seem heavy. Estrangement, burden, conflict, isolation. Each one a cut that marks those who see what others don't. And yet, here lies the paradox. What feels like a curse is also proof of life. Byung-Chul Han reminds us that a world without negativity, without resistance, without shadow, is not paradise. It is suffocation. When everything shines, nothing has depth. When everything is transparent, nothing is intimate. When the other disappears, so does the possibility of love, mystery, and freedom. So perhaps the dangers of perception are not signs of failure. They are signs that you are still resisting the flattening of the world, that you are preserving what the swarm cannot tolerate: silence, contradiction, hiddenness, the shadow that makes light meaningful. Think of the weight you carry. You assumed it was weakness, but perhaps it is sensitivity refusing to go numb. Think of your estrangement. You believed it was exile, but perhaps it is the refusal to dissolve into the swarm. Think of your conflicts. You saw them as proof you don't belong, but perhaps they are proof you do, proof that you are awake inside a dream. The paradox is this: what isolates you is also what protects the human in you. What feels unbearable is the very thing that shields you from the violence of positivity, from the endless demand to expose, to produce, to conform. Han calls negativity indispensable, not the destructive kind, but the kind that resists saturation, a pause, a limit, a shadow. This negativity is what keeps freedom alive, and those who see more than others often become guardians of this negativity. You are not broken because you notice too much. You are needed, precisely because you notice what others would erase. So when you feel the dangers pressing in, remember, they are not punishments, they are reminders. They are the cost of carrying a gift that was never meant to feel easy. The task is not to extinguish this gift, nor to glorify it. The task is to live with it, carefully, humbly, with the wisdom to know when to speak and when to remain silent, when to connect and when to withdraw. Because in the end, perception is not about exposing everything. It is about holding the balance: light and shadow, presence and absence, self and other. Without that balance, the world becomes flat. With it, the world regains its depth. The paradox is that your curse is also your calling, and to carry it is not to be condemned, it is to be entrusted. So the question becomes, how do we live with this gift without letting it break us? The way forward demands not heroism, but humility. The way forward is not to close your eyes, nor to harden your heart. It is to carry perception wisely, to let it sharpen you without hollowing you out. Byung-Chul Han reminds us, a world without shadows is not clarity, but blindness. The cult of transparency leaves no place for mystery, silence, or depth. And yet, these are the very spaces the human spirit needs in order to breathe. So the first step is to reclaim shadow. Protect corners of your life that are not for display, not for performance. Let them remain opaque. Shadow is not absence, it is sanctuary. The second is to rediscover the other. Han warns that when the other vanishes, we collapse into mirrors reflecting mirrors. True perception is not fulfilled in isolation. It awakens when exchanged, not with everyone, but with those rare few who can bear your clarity. Let someone see through your eyes, even if only for a moment. The third is to resist speed. The swarm thrives on immediacy, on instant reactions, but perception belongs to slowness. It needs time to ripen, to breathe. Choose to pause, choose to wait. In a world addicted to acceleration, slowness itself becomes an act of freedom. And finally, practice silence. Not the silence of exile, but the silence that holds space for intimacy, for thought, for the emergence of the other. The way forward is not heroic, it is humble. It is the daily discipline of protecting shadow, honoring the other, embracing slowness, and allowing silence. Carried like this, perception ceases to be a curse. It becomes a lantern, not a blaze that blinds, not a spotlight that exposes, but a quiet flame, steady, fragile, alive. You have walked through the dangers, estrangement, burden, conflict, isolation. Each one cuts, each one wounds, and yet, together they form a strange initiation, because what isolates you is also what confirms you are alive. What feels unbearable is the very thing that shields you from the violence of sameness, from the suffocating brightness of a world with no shadows. Han would say, negativity is not destruction, but creation. Without shadow, there is no light. Without resistance, no freedom. Without the other, no self. So your gift is not madness. It is not weakness. It is the reminder that the world is deeper than the swarm believes, that behind every performance there is silence, that behind every smile there may be sorrow, and that to notice this is not to be broken, but to be awake. You do not have to erase your perception. nor must you worship it. You are called to live with it, carefully, tenderly, courageously, to guard what the world tries to erase: silence, mystery, contradiction, shadow.
And now, the call. Do not lock your vision away. Share it where it matters. Not everywhere, not with everyone, but with those who need a reminder that light and shadow belong together. Tell me, where in your life have you seen what others ignored? Share it. Because when you speak, others recognize themselves, and the distance between you begins to shrink. And remember, this path is not a single revelation. Nothing changes in a single click. It takes persistence, a willingness to keep looking deeper, to keep exploring yourself, and to surround yourself with those rare people who help you unfold instead of shrink. If this video spoke to you, stay with the journey. Subscribe, leave a like, and share it with those who carry the same burden, the ones you recognize as seeing too much. They may need this flame as much as you do. Until then, keep your flame alive, protect it, carry it carefully, and let it light the way for you and for those still stumbling in the glare.